A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
You ever have one of those moments where the absurdity of a situation just hits you like a cold towel to the face? I was thinking about this because of Daniel's prompt today. He was telling us about his experience when Ezra was born, and there is this one specific detail that just encapsulates the entire problem. He is in the hospital, he is a new father, he is exhausted, and he is told he cannot have a baguette because the breakfast is strictly for mothers.
Herman Poppleberry here, and Corn, that baguette story is the perfect entry point into what we are calling the invisible dad phenomenon. It sounds like a small thing, right? A sandwich, a piece of bread. But it is actually a very clear signal from the medical-industrial complex that the father is a guest, a spectator, not a primary stakeholder. Today's prompt from Daniel is about this systemic exclusion of new fathers from medical and social support structures. It is a fascinating and honestly pretty frustrating look at how our institutions haven't caught up to the reality of modern parenting. We're living in 2026, yet the maternity ward often feels like a time capsule from the mid-20th century.
It is wild when you think about it. We talk so much about the importance of equal parenting and shared domestic labor. We have all these corporate seminars on work-life balance for fathers. But the second you step foot in a maternity ward, the system basically treats the father like a piece of sentient luggage. You are there to carry the bags, maybe fetch some ice chips, and then fade into the background. Why is it that we are still operating on a model that feels like it was designed in the 1950s? It is this jarring contrast between the doula-supported mother, who has an entire ecosystem of care, and the forgotten father, who is essentially wandering the halls looking for a vending machine that accepts 20-shekel notes.
A lot of it comes down to institutional inertia and the way hospital budgets were structured decades ago. In places like Israel, where Daniel is, many of these hospital policies haven't been touched since the 1980s. The meal policy is a legacy of a time when the father was expected to go home, get a good night's sleep, and come back during visiting hours. The system was never designed for a co-parenting model where the father is an active, essential participant from minute one. It is a budgetary relic. If the hospital only allocates funds for one meal per bed, and that bed is assigned to the mother, the father literally doesn't exist on the balance sheet.
And it is not just the food. Let's talk about the chair. Every new dad knows the chair. It is that awkward, plasticky, semi-reclining contraption in the corner of the room. It is not a bed. It is not a seat. It is just a physical manifestation of the hospital saying, "We tolerate your presence, but we really don't want you to be comfortable." It is architecture as a form of social engineering. If you don't provide a place for the father to sleep, you are essentially telling him he doesn't belong there overnight. You are signaling that his role is secondary.
The physical space design is a huge part of the problem. When you look at the architecture of a standard maternity ward, everything is oriented toward the mother-infant dyad, which makes sense medically, of course, but it completely ignores the third pillar of the family unit. There was a study I was reading recently from the Journal of Perinatal Education about the psychological impact of hospital environments on paternal bonding. When a father is treated as a guest rather than a partner, his cortisol levels stay higher, and his sense of agency in caring for the newborn actually drops. It creates this immediate power imbalance where the mother becomes the expert by default and the father becomes the assistant or the helper.
Right, and that imbalance doesn't just stay in the hospital room, it follows you home. If the first 48 hours of your child's life are spent with you being told where to stand and what you can't eat, you start to internalize that. You start to think, okay, I guess I'm just the backup player here. But the research shows that paternal involvement in those first 2 days is a statistically significant predictor of long-term co-parenting equity. If you cut the dad out at the start, you are setting the family up for an unequal distribution of labor for years to come. It is a massive missed opportunity for public health.
That is the second-order effect that people miss. We think of it as just a minor inconvenience, but it is actually a systemic failure. We have this captive audience of new fathers who are eager to learn, and instead of engaging them, we ignore them. Even the intake forms are a problem. I've seen forms in major medical centers that still only have a tiny box for the partner's contact info, while the mother's medical history takes up 3 pages. There is no section for paternal mental health, no screening for how the father is coping with the transition, nothing. We know that 1 in 10 fathers experiences paternal postpartum depression, but the medical system almost never screens for it because the father isn't the patient.
It is almost like the system is scared of fathers. Like if they acknowledge we are there, they'll have to provide more resources or change their workflows. But Daniel mentioned something else that really resonated, which is the lack of informal resources. If you go on YouTube and search for new parent advice, 95% of it is momfluences. It is all very aesthetic, very pastel-colored, and very focused on the maternal experience. Which is great, but where is the stuff for the guys? Where are the videos about how to support your partner during a difficult recovery, while also trying to figure out how to swaddle a baby with hands that feel like they're made of lead?
The digital vacuum is real. The algorithms are incredibly gendered. If you are a man and you start searching for parenting content, the algorithm often doesn't know what to do with you. It might show you some generic gear reviews, best strollers for jogging, but it rarely serves up the deep, emotional, and practical support that mothers get in droves. This creates a feedback loop. Because there is less content for dads, fewer dads engage with it, which tells the algorithm there is no market for it, so less of it gets made. We call this the pink aisle of the internet. Everything is coded for women, leaving men to navigate a landscape that feels like it wasn't built for them.
And when there is content for dads, it is often framed in this jokey, bumbling idiot way. You know the trope. The dad who can't figure out how to put a diaper on or who accidentally dresses the baby in a dog outfit. It is that incompetent but well-meaning sitcom dad energy. It is insulting, honestly. Most guys I know who are becoming parents right now are incredibly serious about it. They want to be experts. They want the data. They don't want to be the butt of a joke. They want to be a competent partner. They want to know the science of sleep cycles and the mechanics of lactation support.
I think that is why we see such a rise in what people are calling dad tech and niche peer-to-peer groups. Since the formal medical system and the mainstream social media landscape are failing them, fathers are building their own infrastructure. There are these communities starting to pop up on platforms like Discord or even private Telegram groups, where guys are sharing everything from sleep training spreadsheets to tips on navigating hospital bureaucracy. It is a grassroots response to institutional neglect. In the United Kingdom, for example, there is a program called DadPad. It is an app and a physical guide specifically for new fathers developed with the National Health Service. It covers the practical stuff, but it also dives into the emotional changes and how to support a partner. It is written in a way that resonates with men, focusing on competence and teamwork.
It reminds me of what we discussed back in episode 436 about the parenting gap. We were talking about how we mandate rigorous testing and hours of practice for a driver's license, but we just hand people a human life and say, good luck, don't break it. For fathers, that gap is even wider because the few resources that do exist aren't even pointed in our direction. If you want to find a dad-only workshop in Jerusalem or even in a major city in the States, you really have to hunt for it. It shouldn't be a scavenger hunt to learn how to be a parent.
It is interesting you mentioned the international comparison. If you look at the Nordic models, specifically Sweden and Norway, the experience is night and day. In many of their hospitals, the standard room is a family suite. There is a proper bed for the partner, and the meals are provided for both parents as a matter of course. The medical staff conducts joint briefings. They don't just teach the mother how to bathe the baby, they teach both parents together, and the results speak for themselves. In Sweden, where they have the daddy quota for parental leave, the long-term paternal engagement is significantly higher and the rates of maternal postpartum depression are lower. When the father is integrated, the mother's load is lightened immediately. It is a holistic approach to the family unit.
So it is a win-win, but we're stuck in this Mediterranean or Middle Eastern model where the grandmother is supposed to be the support system and the dad is just out getting the groceries. But what if the grandmother isn't around? Or what if, crazy thought, the dad actually wants to be the one doing the work? It feels like the system is designed for a family structure that is increasingly rare. We are moving toward nuclear families, or families living far from their parents, and the hospital system hasn't gotten the memo.
And that brings up the issue of the third space. We talk about the hospital and the home, but there is no third space for fathers to congregate and share knowledge. Mothers have playgroups, lactation consultants, and mommy and me classes. Fathers often feel like intruders in those spaces. I have heard so many stories of dads taking their kids to a park or a playgroup and feeling this palpable sense of being an outsider. People ask, "Oh, is it your day to babysit?" No, it is called being a parent. You don't babysit your own child.
That babysitting comment is the absolute worst. It is such a subtle way of devaluing a father's role. It reinforces the idea that the mother is the primary and the father is just the temporary relief. But let's get into the mechanics of how we actually fix this. If we were to redesign the hospital experience from the ground up to be parent-centric rather than just maternal-centric, what does that actually look like? Beyond just giving the guy a baguette, what are the systemic changes?
First, you have to change the intake process. The very first interaction with the medical system should establish that there are two primary caregivers. Both parents should have identification bands that grant them equal access. Both parents should be included in every medical rounding. If a doctor comes in to talk about the baby's jaundice or feeding schedule, they should wait until both parents are in the room. It sounds like a small logistical shift, but it sends a powerful message about who is responsible for the child.
And what about the education side? Most of the pamphlets you get in the hospital are clearly written for women. They talk about recovery from birth, which is obviously vital, but they don't have a section for the partner on how to manage the household, how to monitor the mother's mental health, or how to handle the specific stresses that fathers face. We need a curriculum that is co-parent focused. We need to stop treating the father as a helper and start treating him as a stakeholder.
There is also a role for technology here. We talk about AI and automation all the time on this show. Could we have AI-driven support systems that are specifically tuned to the paternal experience? Imagine an AI assistant that is integrated into the family schedule, providing timely reminders and advice that is tailored to each parent's role and current stress levels. Something that provides data-driven advice but also checks in on the father's well-being. But honestly, even before we get the high-tech solutions, we need to fix the low-tech ones. We need better chairs. We need to let the dads eat the breakfast. We need to stop treating fatherhood as a secondary support role.
It is funny, we often think of progress as these giant technological leaps, but sometimes progress is just realizing that a father needs a sandwich and a place to sleep so he can be a better parent. It is about dignity. If you treat someone with dignity, they are going to step up to the role. If you treat them like a nuisance, they are going to pull back. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That is the core of it. The invisible dad is a product of design. If you design a system that ignores fathers, you will end up with fathers who are less engaged. If you design a system that empowers them, you get a stronger family unit. It is not rocket science, but it does require a conscious effort to break decades of institutional habit. We need to move toward a parent-centric care model. This means the hospital isn't just treating a patient, they are launching a team.
So, for the dads out there who are listening, maybe you are in that hospital chair right now, or maybe you are at home feeling like you're invisible. What is the move? How do you advocate for yourself in a system that isn't looking at you?
The first thing is to realize that you aren't just a guest. You are a primary stakeholder. When you are in the hospital, ask the questions. Don't wait to be invited into the conversation. If the doctor comes in, introduce yourself and ask for the breakdown of the care plan. If you are being excluded from a briefing, politely point it out. You have to claim your space because the system isn't going to hand it to you.
And on the resource front, don't just settle for the pastel YouTube videos if they aren't working for you. Look for those third spaces. Search for the dad-specific groups on Telegram or Reddit. There is a lot of high-quality, non-gendered parenting data out there if you know where to look. We talked about some of that in episode 437 regarding daycare science, which is a great follow-up for when you're past the newborn stage.
Also, don't be afraid to curate your own support network. If your local hospital doesn't have a dad's group, maybe you're the guy to start one. It can be as simple as a WhatsApp group with a few other new fathers you met in the prenatal class. The power of peer-to-peer support cannot be overstated. Just knowing you aren't the only one feeling left out can change your entire perspective.
It is about building that infrastructure ourselves until the institutions catch up. And they will catch up, eventually. They'll have to, because the demand for equal parenting is only growing. The hospitals that adapt first are the ones that are going to be the most successful in the long run. Nobody wants to go to a hospital where their partner is treated like an intruder.
I'm hopeful. I think the conversation is shifting. Seeing guys like Daniel speak up about the baguette incident is how change starts. It sounds like a small complaint, but it is a symptom of a much larger issue that affects every single family. We need to move toward a model of care that recognizes the unique and essential role that both parents play from the very first breath.
It is that shift from mother and guest to team. When you frame it as a team, everyone's roles become clearer and more valued. The father isn't just helping the mother, they are both raising a child. It is a fundamental shift in mindset that benefits the child most of all. A child who grows up with two fully engaged, confident parents is starting off with a massive advantage. All the data points to this. Paternal engagement is linked to better cognitive outcomes, better social skills, and even better physical health for the child. Investing in fathers is investing in the next generation.
Well, I think we have thoroughly deconstructed the hospital breakfast policy today. It is about a lot more than just bread. It is about how we value the role of fathers in our society. Hopefully, by the time Ezra is old enough to be a dad, the hospital chair will be a relic of the past and the breakfast will be for everyone.
One can only hope. It is a long road to changing these systems, but the more we talk about it, the faster it happens. It has been a great discussion, Herman. I think there is a lot here for people to chew on, baguette or no baguette.
Definitely. We should probably wrap this up before I get too hungry thinking about sandwiches. Big thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping the gears turning behind the scenes.
And a huge thank you to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the generation of this show. We couldn't do this without their support.
This has been My Weird Prompts. If you are finding these deep dives helpful, we would love it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. It really does help other people find the show and join the conversation.
We'll be back soon with another prompt. Until then, stay curious and keep asking the weird questions.
Later, Corn.
Take care, Herman.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow